Hello and welcome to Business Standard. Here's a glimpse of the views expressed on the web pages of Business Standard this week. Shekhar Gupta, in his weekly column National Interest, says every leader has their key brand propositions. Modi's, besides Hindutva and hard nationalism, included administrative ability, execution, and efficient delivery of welfare. We've seen some of that in the past 7 years, especially with distribution of welfare benefits to the poorest and the building of hard infrastructure. But the foundations of basic governance were not strengthened. Institutions were weakened, none more so than the Union Cabinet. If this functioned like a normal cabinet institution, its most effective ministers would be put in charge of the COVID crisis response. Those who failed on the job would have been shown the door. The government's defense of its COVID handling ranges from our deaths are still much lower than Britain to this is an awful, evil new variant. It's a government in denial, Gupta writes. In his weekly column for the Business Standard, TN looks at Credit Suisse India strategist Neelkant Mishra's four-part article series in this newspaper and how it spells hope at a time when a healthcare crisis has engulfed the country. Nayan writes that according to Mishra, multiple changes have gone into the creation of the unicorns that are now transforming some old businesses and creating new ones, ranging from e-commerce to fintech and edtech, but also in distribution and logistics. Nayan further writes that the growth of software as a service is a big boost for small and medium businesses looking to harness IT at low cost. He concludes by saying that without minimizing today's depressing evidence of systemic and government failures or causing offense to those whose lives may have been needlessly ruined, there is another side to the India story and therefore reason for hope. In his weekly column for the Business Standard, Mahesh Vyas writes that the raging second wave of COVID-19 has had an adverse impact on household sentiments. It couldn't have been otherwise. There is widespread anguish. This is spilling over into anxiety regarding the long-term well-being of households. Infections, scarcities, fear, and even deaths are rampant. Science has delivered vaccines, but India fell short of delivering these or providing other more ordinary medical services to the millions that got infected. Household sentiments and expectations were bound to get clouded. Pessimism is also stark in household perceptions regarding their future compared to their current conditions, Vyas says. In his weekly column for the Business Standard, A.K. Bhattacharya writes, a widely held belief from the final result in West Bengal is that the BJP has cornered the seats that were earlier held by the left parties and the Congress. But a seat-wise analysis of results reveals a different story. The BJP's rise from 3 to 77 seats was achieved by the party winning as many as 48 seats that the TMC had held in 2016. The Saffron party took only 15 from the Congress and 9 from the left parties. The question for TMC in the next 5 years would be how well it can protect its own turf against the inroads that the BJP has already made, Bhattacharya writes. With the government granting permission for 5G trials over a period of 6 months, the bruised telecom sector is certain that the next round of spectrum auction won't be held anytime before 2022, writes Nivedita Mukherjee in a column for Business Standard. Telecom companies then maintain that an early 5G spectrum auction would drain the industry even further, and the latest signal from the government would mean a cushion of several months. Therefore, a relief for at least some players, as 5G spectrum auction would involve big bucks in search of game-changer applications and services, writes Mukherjee. India desperately needs a new political narrative, writes Prabal Basu Roy in a column for Business Standard. Politicians have the organizational capability and the constitutional mandate to spread the message of an alternative narrative and fight for it. US President Joe Biden has risen to it post the Trumpian carnage. Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal has the mandate now and a historic opportunity to shape and lead it at the national level too. She, though, has to make adjustments to her leadership style and advisors if she decides to embark on this path of promoting trust and solidarity between citizens in a divided society across party lines, writes Roy. Given the Modi government's emphasis on self-reliance, it is worth comparing the Indian and Pakistani approaches to their light aircraft fighters, writes Ajay Shukla in a column for Business Standard. Shukla says that India's Tejas has emerged as a light multi-role fighter with fourth-generation technology and innovations such as its unique aerodynamic configuration, the use of composite materials, and its advanced avionics. With its design in Indian hands, it can be easily modified into variants such as a naval fighter. It can also be tailored to suit export requirements. Pakistan's JF-17, co-designed with China, is a third-generation fighter that cannot be tailored for export customers beyond a point. On the plus side though, its off-the-shelf materials and systems make it a cheap and reliable fighter for air-to-air combat. As a Chinese analyst summed up, the JF-17 is the aircraft of today and the Tejas is the aircraft of tomorrow. Private companies that cooperate with governments must be allowed to make profits, or they will simply not enter into any agreements with the state, writes Business Standard in an editorial. Serum Institute of India chief Adar Poonawalla said in a recent interview to the Times of London he had been receiving calls that were full of aggression, including those from political leaders. It was strongly implied that he had flown to the UK to escape this pressure of being vilified and blamed. The interview revealed to the world the pitfalls of running a vital enterprise in India. You become a target for intimidation. The government's duty is to protect entrepreneurs and business persons, not be another source of pressure, the editorial says. Business Standard writes in an editorial that GST collection for April indicates a structural shift. Collection touched an all-time high of 1.41 trillion rupees in April compared to 1.24 trillion rupees in March. The GST mop-up has been in excess of 1 trillion rupees for 7 months in a row. There could be multiple reasons for the jump witnessed in April. Since collection in April reflects transactions in March, it's likely that businesses deposited pending dues before the end of the fiscal year, which pushed up the total collection. It's also likely that economic recovery was gathering momentum, which led to higher activity and tax collection. Another reason, and perhaps the most important one, could be significant improvement in compliance, which also explains higher tax collection over the last few months, the editorial says. In an editorial, Business Standard takes a look at the RBI's Rescue Act to deal with the second wave of COVID-19. Besides relaxing rules for different sets of private sector borrowers, the central bank has eased norms regarding the overdraft facility for state governments. Overall, along with the scheme for the health sector, the RBI has done well to focus on small borrowers who are likely to face a disproportionate impact of COVID-related disruption once again. It's also good that no general moratorium has been announced. This will give banks and other lenders the discretion to extend benefits. However, the lenders and the regulator will need to carefully watch the asset quality, the editorial says.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.